Hi, I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation and welcome back to the Hive. In this video, we'll be doing a smart plug side-by-side comparison. I've got a bunch of smart plugs here and we're going to be weighing them up against each other in order to figure out which one is the best to spend our money on. So while I roll the intro animation, take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when I release new videos each week. And let's get started. So I've gathered together 7 smart plugs from various manufacturers and I'm going to compare them to each other and see how well they perform the relatively simple task of turning something off and on. For the lineup, we have, to begin with, the Xiaomi Akara smart socket. This is a Zigbee smart socket requiring the use of either the Xiaomi hub or another Zigbee interface like the Nortec stick that I reviewed in a previous video. I happen to have the Xiaomi hub already, but we will discuss that and the pricing a little later on. We also have the IKEA trad-free smart socket. We reviewed it in a previous video, and this one is working after being replaced under warranty by IKEA. Again, this is a Zigbee unit requiring additional hardware to use in your smart home setup, and that may include a steering device from IKEA. We'll also look at the TP-Link Casa KP105 smart switch. Now, this is the first in the lineup that uses Wi-Fi and can operate without an additional bridge. Now, while we're at it, we'll throw in the TP-Link KP115 smart plug as well, and this unit includes energy monitoring, but otherwise has the same feature set as the KP105. We'll also look at this Arlec Grid Connect smart plug-in socket from Bunnings, and while I was at Bunnings, I also picked up an Arlec Grid Connect smart plug socket with energy monitoring. So we'll throw that into the mix as well. And lastly, we'll take a look at this brilliant lighting smart Wi-Fi plug with energy monitoring, which I picked up at Officeworks. Now, I've done standalone videos on all of these units except for the Xiaomi, so check those out in the video description down below if you want to watch those, and I will also be doing a full review of the Xiaomi starter kit, including the smart plug, in the future as soon as I can get another one in. So being that the core functionality of these units is the same, they turn things on and off, the testing methodology is going to be relatively simple and the scoring is going to work like this. The scoring has been divided into 5 categories and each category will be scored out of 5 points for a total of 25 points. The categories are build quality and design, the initial setup experience, the native app UX and functionality, the Home Assistant integration potential, and the warranty, pricing, and availability. Now, obviously, some of these scores may be skewed slightly by my personal opinion, as user experience can be somewhat subjective and difficult to quantify. That being said, I will try to be as logical and unbiased as possible. So first, we are going to look at build quality and design, and we will start with the Xiaomi Akara smart plug. Xiaomi was the first smart plug I added to my smart home when we bought the Xiaomi Akara starter kit several years ago to replace our home alarm system so that we would have something smart. The build quality of the Xiaomi devices is really great. It does have a slightly frustrating safety feature where it blocks the active and neutral pins if you're trying to plug something in that doesn't have a ground pin, which is a problem if you've got double insulated appliances that you want to switch. But that problem is easily bypassed with a wooden toothpick into the ground port when the unit's not powered. This unit could also theoretically be used as a travel adapter when you're in Australia for 2-pin appliances from either the US or Europe, provided your appliance can run on 220 volts thanks to these additional pins here either side of the ground pin. There's a button on top of the unit for switching, and there's a blue indicator LED. And these units are narrow enough to plug them in next to each other in standard spaced sockets, meaning they don't block the sockets next to them from using any other appliances. They do stick up a little bit from the center of the plug and can foul on a switched GPO, but they're fine in unswitched power sockets, and the switch stays engaged even if you are plugging it into a switched GPO. The Xiaomi units are the smallest of the units on test today, which is great for setting them up in tight spaces like in the back of my set wall here, where I've got the GPO for the light fittings. I've got my calipers here and I'm going to take a measurement. Now this unit is 38.8, so basically 40 millimeters wide. It is 56.6, so basically 57 millimeters tall, and the depth without the prongs on the plug is 31.04, and with the prongs the ground pin is 52.14. And so that's the smallest unit. So if that information helps you, hopefully you've got that now. This particular unit is one of only 3 that will work in the configuration that I have on the back of my set wall here because of the orientation of the GPO, which I will fix one day so that I can use any smart switch. The mild annoyance of plugging in double insulated or 2-pin appliances does bring the Xiaomi score down to 4.5 points. I've only taken off half a point for that mild annoyance. Next up, we will take a look at the IKEA Trad-Free, and while the build quality of the unit is good, there are no external controls on this device, and it is the only one in the lineup that doesn't have any external controls. There is a tiny pinhole in the bottom of the unit here, and I've discovered that this is for resetting the device. To do that, you need to stick something in there to press the button. The hole isn't wide enough for a wooden toothpick, so I ended up needing to use a metal SIM eject tool from an iPhone. Of course, for the reset to work, the unit needs to be powered. Now, I don't know about you, but I get really nervous sticking a metal object into a hole in something that has mains power running into it. The IKEA Trad-Free is also a chunky unit. It's the second largest unit in this test, and because of the width of the unit, it makes plugging anything into the adjacent ports in either a dual outlet or a power board difficult without first unplugging the Trad-Free smart plug. Now, in terms of the width, I'll take our measurements again. So the width of this unit is 55.67 millimeters, so 56 millimeters. The depth of the plastic part is 38.42 millimeters, and the height is 101.8 millimeters, so 102 millimeters there. And with the power prongs, it is a total on the ground pin, which is the deepest, of 58.5 millimeters deep. So this is quite a chunky unit. Now, that being said, it is still one of the 3 plugs that would work behind the set wall here by virtue of the chunkiness being directed down from the center of the plug rather than up. The lack of external controls, the potentially dangerous reset button, and the width partially obstructing adjacent ports brings the build quality and design score of the IKEA Trad-Free down to only 1 point. Next up, TP-Link's cassette smart plugs. Both units have fantastic build quality, and they each feature an external switching button on the top. They have indicator LEDs, and the width doesn't impede access to adjacent ports on either a power board or a wall socket. It's at this point that I do note that TP-Link also have international models of these smart switches, meaning that these can be found in the US, UK, and Europe to suit your electrical system. The only downside that I could find with these units is that they stick up from the center of the plug above the plug, meaning that they can block the switches in a traditional wall socket or a switched power board, and for that I'm only deducting half a point because everything else here is fine, and the whole idea is for the smart plug to do the switching for you. The width of the unit is 43.4, so 43.5 millimeters. It is 76.3 millimeters tall, and the body is 41.8 millimeters deep, and with the ground prong 62 millimeters deep. So quite compact, not quite as compact as the Xiaomi unit, but quite compact there. This design where it sticks up from the center also means that in the current configuration behind my set wall here, these won't fit. I'm also aware that in many parts of the world, wall outlets aren't switched, so I'm aware that this isn't necessarily a big issue, giving each of these units 4.5 points. Next up, we've got the Arlec Grid Connect, and these units both have the same problem where they extend up from the center of the plug, covering the switches. That being said, these are also significantly thicker and stand off from the wall a fair bit more than the TP-Link, and that means that there's room behind the body of the unit to get a finger in to flick the switch. But they also have a second problem, and that is that they are wide. At their widest point, they are wider than the IKEA Trad-free unit, meaning there's absolutely no chance of getting two of these side by side in a power board or a standard space GPO. But by virtue of them also being deeper with these slightly tapered size, they don't seem to impede inserting a standard plug into an adjacent socket. These are the largest unit in the lineup here today, and if I grab my caliper, we can see that the width here is at 60 millimeters. The height is a whopping 110 millimeters, and the depth of the body only is 49 millimeters, and with the ground pin, which is the longest pin, we're looking at 69 millimeters. So it's a chunky boy. In comparison to some of the other units, the quality of the plastic just doesn't feel as good, and the buttons on these units don't feel as solid. It's hard to explain exactly what I mean here, but it just feels cheaper. I am going to give both of these Arlec units a score of 2 points for build quality and design. Lastly, the brilliant smart plug. It doesn't block the switch as the body extends downward from the plug. It doesn't impede the adjacent sockets, and the button feels good and solid. I am in fact struggling to find anything bad to say about the build quality and design of this unit. For the measurements, if we grab our calipers again, our width, we are looking at 42 millimeters, and if we go for the height, we're at 66.3 millimeters, and the depth of just the body is 38 millimeters, and with the ground pin, we're looking at 58 millimeters. So it is the second smallest unit, and being one of the three that will fit in behind the set wall here. So this unit is actually getting all 5 points for build quality and design. Next up, the initial setup. The IKEA Tradfree gets marked down to 2 points here because of the requirement to pair a steering device to the bridge and then pair that steering device to the switch. The good news here though is that the app guides you through the process and it's pretty straightforward, and the printed instructions also show you in pictures how to go about it. To my surprise, the easiest setup of the lineup was in fact the 3 Outtro units. The Brilliant Smart and the 2 Alec units configuration is on rails using the Outtro app, and it makes it super simple. And if you've already got other devices set up in Outtro Smart, it even remembers your Wi-Fi password, making it a simple case of clicking continue a bunch of times and maybe putting the unit into pairing mode by holding down the button for 5 seconds. The Xiaomi unit is pretty simple to set up as well. Being a Zigbee unit, you put the unit into pairing mode, tell the app you want to add the specific accessory that you're targeting, and then the bridge finds it and sets it up. It can be a little bit confusing in the app to find the right accessory though, because there are so many available in the app. The bridge also provides audio feedback in Mandarin when it's in pairing mode and when the device is paired. So if you don't speak Mandarin, it can be hard to tell if there's a problem. But the app itself is in English, so we're pretty much covered there. I'm giving this unit 4 points because there doesn't seem to be a way to change the prompt language on the bridge when you put it into pairing mode. Lastly, the TP-Link units. These units did end up losing a point for requiring a connection to a separate Wi-Fi network that's created by the units during setup. But again, much like Outtro, the app guides you through the process and it is super easy to follow. And that then leads us neatly into the native apps. Now you might think that the Outtro units would get the same score, but because the layouts are customized by the manufacturers, that's not actually the case. The Alec units both scored the same 3 points for the features, layout, and visibility of monitoring data. But the Brilliant unit gets marked down because the layout of their energy monitoring page is not very good. The energy monitoring page is badly laid out to the point you can't actually tell what units the damn thing is measuring in. All the Outtro units also lose an additional point for not having a native iPadOS app. Outtro can only run on iPad in scaled mode, which is far from being a good experience, and it just looks awful, especially on a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. It also doesn't have landscape mode, which compounds how bad it looks on iPad. Of course, reliance on the cloud, which introduces a fair amount of latency, also loses the Outtro devices an additional point. The IKEA Tradfree, on the other hand, has a native iPadOS app and no reliance on the cloud. But I do find the app a little bit clunky. And while there's scheduling and scenes, there's no metrics available, and it feels very minimalist. There's nothing wrong with an app being minimalist, but it feels almost as if they're shielding users from anything that could be considered even slightly technical, and that just feels a little bit insulting. So I'm taking a point off for that one, and for the clunkiness of the app in general. The Xiaomi Mi Home app works on both iPad and iPhone, but there's some gripes here. The accessories that I have here apparently only let you set them up if your app is set to mainland China, though that may have changed since I last tried. I will be sure to do a full unboxing and review of the Xiaomi starter kit as soon as I can get another one in, so be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out when I release that video. Another thing I've noticed with the Xiaomi Mi Home app is that it has a lot of latency that just isn't present when you control the units from Home Assistant. I suspect that there may be some cloud implementation under the hood, and I might need to take a look at the network traffic in that dedicated video for the Xiaomi products. The app itself is fairly well laid out and there's great functionality, but that latency, which was more than a second during writing, made the unit very frustrating to use. The layout of the energy monitoring in the app is easy to follow and it offers some graphing, which also seems pretty slow to load, again causing me to think that this data is coming from a cloud server. These issues do bring the score for the Xiaomi native app down to 2 points. Lastly, the TP-Link Casa Smart app. TP-Link seemed to somehow have balanced the minimalism of the IKEA app with the logical layout and feature set of Outtro. My only gripe here, and rest assured I am nitpicking, is that there's not a good explanation in the app of what away mode does. 10 seconds of Googling revealed to me that it is a feature to give the appearance that you're home while you're actually away, and during that period of away mode, your Casa device will turn on and off at random intervals. I'll have to test that to see if it's worthwhile, but I think I'd rather use Home Assistant to handle those kinds of automations anyway. The countdown timer function shows the countdown on the main devices screen as well as in the timer pane, but oddly not on the device's main switch page. The layout of the metrics data, whether it's energy monitoring or just the runtime data, is logical and easy to read, and it looks great on both iPad and iPhone, so I'm giving both TP-Link units the full 5 points for their native app. Next up, we'll talk about the Home Assistant integration. Starting with the Brilliant unit, it was far from its namesake. While I could control the switch, none of the energy monitoring data was passed through to Home Assistant, and that then means that I wouldn't be able to pass that information into InfluxDB for visualization on a Grafana dashboard. And if you've not watched that video, I'll leave a link in the video description. I ran into the same problem with the Arlec Grid Connect unit with energy monitoring, so both the Brilliant Smart unit and the Arlec Grid Connect with energy monitoring only get 2 points. The non-energy monitoring Arlec unit gets 1 extra point, but on all of the Outtro-based units, there was roughly half a second to a full second of latency. While the setup of the Outtro integration into Home Assistant is really simple, every single time I review a Outtro-based device, I'm inevitably disappointed with the available functions and sensors that get passed through to Home Assistant. The Xiaomi Home Assistant integration is really quite simple to get set up, with the IP address and MAC address being optional fields as the unit scans your network, but it can be helpful to add those to narrow it down if you've got multiple gateways. The hardest part of the initial setup is to get the key for the gateway, but there's lots of good write-ups and even a link right in Home Assistant to take you to instructions on how to get there, and I'll be sure to cover that in the video about Xiaomi. If all you're doing is adding another plug to an existing integration though, you may not even have to do anything to get that into Home Assistant. At most, you might need to reload the integration. Once the Xiaomi integration is plugged into Home Assistant, all of the latency that we experience from the native app is gone. Though there is some barely perceptible latency, it's about the same as when you press the button on the device itself. And this is because the Home Assistant integration appears to be talking directly to the Xiaomi gateway using a local API instead of talking out to Xiaomi's servers and then back into our network here. We also get all of the energy metering data passed through to Home Assistant without any hassle. And in my template sensors quick tips video, I showed you how you can break that out into a separate sensor in Home Assistant to use for automation triggers and conditions or for graphing your energy consumption at an appliance level. Lastly, the TP-Link units. The setup of the TP-Link Home Assistant integration puts all the others to shame. You choose the integration, confirm that you want to integrate your Casa Smart devices, and you're done. It takes less than 20 seconds to integrate into Home Assistant the first time, and that includes the time that it's scanning your network for devices. Now, to be fair, I did have to reload the integration in my video last week, but that also takes all of 2 seconds to then load all the devices. When the integration is integrated, we get full control of our smart switches, and the energy monitor unit also has all of that energy monitoring data passed through perfectly, just like the Xiaomi unit. And once again, we can break that data out using a template sensor if we wanted to. So the TP-Link units get all 5 points for the Home Assistant integration. Now on to our final category, warranty, pricing, and availability. For this category, we will also be discussing whether or not these units are available in international flavors. Now, fair warning, I will be speaking in Australian dollars for this segment, and I'll put the equivalent US dollar amount on screen somewhere too to help you out. Now, at the time of writing, $1 Australian dollar was worth 77 US cents. Now, for this category, the Xiaomi unit is the hardest to quantify. Because they're not technically available in Australia, you need to order them from overseas or find them on eBay, and the prices can fluctuate from anywhere between 21 and 35 Australian dollars, and that doesn't always include shipping. Also, as I mentioned at the start, this is a Zigbee unit, meaning that you either need to purchase the proprietary Xiaomi gateway or another compatible Zigbee bridge or hub. The Xiaomi gateway can be found on eBay for around $40 Australian, but again, that price is a little bit challenging to pin down. Oh, and good luck getting warranty replacements and repairs on these units. I personally haven't tried, and I hope I never have to. Now, while it's possible that the original seller will help you out if you get a bad unit, your after-sales service is unlikely to be a great experience. The manufacturer is based in China, and as I mentioned just a moment ago, these units aren't technically readily available here in Australia. The other thing to consider here is that I've not seen any international versions of these smart plugs, though it's certainly conceivable that they exist. And as I mentioned before, we also have the EU and US two-prong socket on the front of these units, but it's only the Australian plug on the back. Now, because of the difficulties with nailing down an exact price, the bridge requirement, and the likelihood that it's going to take 2 or more weeks to get to you, I'm giving the Xiaomi only 1 point. The IKEA trad-free plug is another one that's difficult to quantify. If you only want a standalone smart switch and you've already got a steering device that you don't mind grouping with the smart switch to turn everything on and everything off at the same time, then it's $20 and it sits right in amongst the rest of the field here. But if you're just getting started and you do need a steering device, that then brings your starting price up to $30. To then use the native IKEA app or integrate into Home Assistant, you then need to look into getting a gateway, and for that you're looking at another $39, bringing your starting price up to $69. Now, you could theoretically use a Zigbee USB stick to connect the IKEA smart switch by holding it next to your USB stick, but the Zigbee USB sticks aren't cheap either, with the Nortec that I previously reviewed priced at $106.12 Australian on Amazon at the time of writing. IKEA's warranty process is great, and if you watch my video on the smart switch, you'll know that I found this out firsthand. I just wandered into the store with my receipt, handed it back, and they gave me store credit to purchase the replacement. Now, that being said, I've been unable to find conclusive details on the warranty coverage period for IKEA. But again, if you're in Australia, consumer law will cover you for at least 12 months. The availability of these units is pretty good, with the caveat of if you've got an IKEA store nearby. And there are international versions of this plug available in the EU, UK, and US. In terms of the availability of the units, there are 2 stores here in Melbourne, but certainly some parts of Australia especially would struggle to get to their closest IKEA store. Trad-free is only getting 2 points here because of the cost of entry to start from scratch and the lack of available information for their warranty. Now the rest of the field is much easier to quantify with clear pricing and no need for additional hardware. The Arlec Grid Connect without energy monitoring was the cheapest unit we've reviewed today at only $17.50 from Bunnings. And you can just walk into Bunnings and grab them off the shelf. Energy monitoring will set you back an additional $4.06, clocking in at $21.56 in total. Again, I've been unable to find any definitive information about the warranty included with these units, but again, you'll be covered by Australian consumer law for an absolute minimum of 12 months. These plugs are only available in Australian versions. Now, because they are the cheapest and easiest to get your hands on, I'm giving them 3 points, deducting a point for the lack of clarity around their warranty and another point for not having international versions. The Brilliant Lighting Smart Plug was $24.98 from Officeworks and comes with a 12-month warranty that is outlined in the box that comes with the unit. The energy monitoring functionality warrants the extra $5 or so over non-energy monitoring units in this lineup. That being said though, the way that it's presented in the app is poor. The price is okay and the warranty is okay, and you should be able to get them in any Officeworks store. But again, these are only available in this Australian plug configuration. I'm also going to give this unit 3 points. Lastly, we bring ourselves to the TP-Link Casa Smart Switches. At $20 for the unit without energy monitoring and $25 for the unit with energy monitoring, the pricing is pretty reasonable, especially when you then factor in that they each come with a 2-year warranty, that they're available at Bunnings stores around Australia, and that there's international versions available in the US, UK, and EU. I think that these units both earn the full 5 points for pricing and warranty and availability. So if we look at the final scores now, we'll see that the TP-Link units come out on top with a total of 23.5 points and an average score across the categories of 4.7 points. I really like these units. Their narrow design means you can stack multiple units next to each other. Their native app is pretty great, and the Home Assistant integration is so simple a child could do it. And it includes all the data from the energy monitoring unit without any hassle. Tied for second place on 17 points each are the Brilliant Lighting and Arlec units without energy monitoring, with an average score of 3.4 across the categories. If I had to choose between these two, I think I'd probably spend the extra $7.50 and get the Brilliant Lighting unit. While the energy monitoring wasn't presented to Home Assistant, the narrower design provides much more flexibility when plugging in something next to this unit. Close behind is the Arlec unit with energy monitoring, which scored 1 point less than its brother because of the energy monitoring data not being available in Home Assistant. This unit got 16 points with an average of 3.2 points across the 5 categories. Again, it's a decent competitor which does the job. And if you're not interested in using Home Assistant and you can live with the cloud latency, you just want to use that native app, you could definitely do worse. For the 2-year units with energy monitoring, it is a difficult decision. While this one displays the energy metering data better in the native app, the Brilliant unit doesn't need its own postcode. I'll definitely revisit the 3 2-year units in the future if I manage to get Tasmoda installed on them. Right behind the Arlec with energy monitoring is the Xiaomi on 15.5 points with an average score across the categories of 3.1. Now, personally, I quite like the Xiaomi units, and we have a bunch of these units around the house to switch things on and off, including the down lights in the hallway and the exhaust fans in our bathrooms. The native app is laid out well, but the latency is awful when using the native app. That problem does go away when you integrate into Home Assistant, and again, the energy monitoring data comes through to Home Assistant without any problems. These are also the most compact of the lineup, smaller than even the Brilliant unit. Lastly, and I have to say I'm honestly surprised about this result, with only 12 points and an average of only 2.4 points across the categories, is the IKEA Tradfree. Its bulky design, lack of external controls, minimalist and clunky app, and the requirement for additional hardware did the Tradfree no favors in this comparison. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think this unit is perfectly fine. It has good Home Assistant integration, and if you're already in the IKEA ecosystem with a bridge and some steering devices, the cost is more reasonable. Or if you want to just pair it to an existing Zigbee stick that you might have, it's certainly reasonable to go and spend $20 on this unit. So my recommendation from this video is to take a look at the TP-Link Casa Smart range. They're readily available from Bunnings stores, and if you're in the US, I imagine that they're probably readily available from hardware stores like Lowe's or even some department stores. At $20 for the basic unit and $25 for the unit with energy monitoring, I think the value here can't be beat compared to these other units here. You pay the same amount for a simple switch without energy monitoring in the TP-Link range as you do for the single switch in the IKEA range, and you don't need any additional hardware with the TP-Link unit. So, do you agree with me, or did I get it wrong? Comment down below with your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. That's all we have for this video, and I do hope that it helped you in your home automation journey. Be sure to comment down below with home automation ideas that you'd like to see me cover in a future video. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button down below to give it a like, and if you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so now. While you're at it, I'd ask that you hit the bell icon to get notified when I release new videos each week. Lastly, if you're enjoying what I'm doing here and you want to help to support the channel, there is a Buy Me a Coffee in the video link description down below. At this time, none of my content is sponsored, and I purchased all of these units using my own money. So contributions through the Buy Me a Coffee link down below are put towards making more and better content for you to enjoy. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.